The scalpel, sharp edge of the ultrasound image, cut through my chest more effectively than any blade ever could. I stared at the grainy black and white photo my private physician had just slid across the mahogany desk, my hands trembling. Actually trembling, something I hadn't experienced since I was a child facing my father's disapproval. "You are certain?" My voice came out, hoarse, stripped of its usual commanding tone. Dr. Moreau nodded, his expression grave. "The pheromone signature is unmistakable, Monsieur Laurent. It is a perfect genetic match. You have an heir, 11 weeks along. The omega in question is a Noah Bennett, 26, residing in the Marias district." I thought back to that night 3 months ago. The masked figure at the Chateau de Beaumont masquerade, smelling of old books and jasmine. The way those green eyes had looked at me through the simple black mask, not with the calculation ID seen in every other Omega-esque gaze that evening, but with something resembling genuine curiosity. The single night we shared in the East Wing, private suite, where I lost myself in a way I hadn't allowed in years, and then the check I left on the pillow at dawn, 50,000 euros. The price of my guilt, my assumption that this was merely another transaction. Now there was a child, my child. The Laurent heir my family had been demanding I produce for the past 5 years. I should have felt triumph. Instead, I felt something dangerously close to panic. The building in the Marais was nothing like the grand estates I frequented. Peeling paint, a flickering light in the narrow hallway, the faint smell of someone's dinner, cooking, garlic and herbs. I climbed 3 flights of stairs, my Italian leather shoes clicking against worn linoleum, until I stood before apartment 3B. I raised my fist to knock, then hesitated. Through the thin door I could hear soft music. Debussy's Clair de Lune played on what sounded like an old record player. The melody transported me back to my childhood, to my mother's music room before she passed, before my father turned the Laurent legacy into a prison of expectations. I knocked. The music stopped. Footsteps approached, light and careful. The door opened, and there he was. Noah Bennett looked different in the afternoon light filtering through his apartment windows. No mask this time, just a face that was almost painfully beautiful in its gentleness. His light brown hair was slightly mussed, as if he'd been running his hands through it. Those green eyes widened in recognition, then something else, fear, maybe, or resignation. "You," he whispered. "May I come in?" I kept my voice level, professional. This was a negotiation, nothing more. He stepped aside wordlessly. The apartment was tiny, a studio, really, with a kitchenette against one wall and a bed tucked into an alcove. But it was neat, filled with books that overflowed from a single shelf onto stacks on the floor. The scent that had drawn me to him that night was stronger here. Old paper, ink, and underneath it all, the subtle sweetness of his omega pheromones. Noah wrapped his arms around himself, a protective gesture that made him look even smaller. "How did you find me?" "Pheromone tracking. My physician is thorough." I watched as he flinched, and something in my chest tightened. "You are pregnant with my child." It wasn't a question, but he nodded anyway. His hand drifted unconsciously to his still, flat stomach, and I noticed the tremble in his fingers. "I didn't plan this," he said quietly. "The contraceptives I was on, they must have failed. I didn't even realize until last week. I've been trying to figure out what to do. The choice is simple." I reached into my jacket and pulled out the contract. I had my lawyers draw up during the drive over. "You carry the child to term. ILL provide the best medical care available. ULL want for nothing during the pregnancy. When the child is born, you sign over full custody to me. In exchange, ULL receive 10 million euros. I watched the color drain from his face as I set the papers on his small dining table, barely large enough for 2 people. 10 million, he repeated numbly. More than enough to secure your future. You can buy a proper home, travel, never work again if you choose. I kept my voice cold, businesslike. This was easier if I didn't think of him as the person who had laughed softly against my shoulder that night, who had whispered that he had never felt so safe. The child will have every advantage as a Laurent heir. The best schools, the finest tutors, a legacy spanning back centuries. Noah moved to the window, his back to me. His shoulders were tense, his breathing uneven. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely audible. And what if I say no? The question caught me off guard. Why would you refuse? This is a generous offer. Because it is my baby too. He turned, and I saw tears streaming down his face. Because I've spent the last week imagining what it would be like to be a parent, to hold my child, to, his voice broke. But I can, to give this baby the life you can. I work at the Bibliothèque Mazarine for barely enough to cover rent. My father died 2 years ago and left me with debts I am still paying off. I can barely take care of myself. He walked to the table and picked up the contract with shaking hands. His tears fell onto the crisp pages, smudging the ink slightly. "I'll sign," he whispered, "but I have one condition, name it. Let me hold the baby once, just once after they reborn, before I have to say goodbye." The request was so simple, so heartbreaking, that I felt something crack in the carefully constructed wall around my emotions. But I was Sebastien Laurent, alpha heir to one of France's oldest noble families. I didn't do sentiment. "Agreed," I said curtly. "My driver will collect you tomorrow morning. You'll move into the Laurent estate for the duration of the pregnancy. Dr. Moreau will oversee your prenatal care personally." Noah signed the contract with trembling hands, his tears falling faster now. I wanted to tell him to stop crying, that this was business, nothing personal, but the words stuck in my throat. Instead, I left, the signed contract in my briefcase, and tried to ignore the way my hands were still shaking. The Laurent estate sprawled across 20 hectares of manicured grounds, just outside Paris. The main house was a 17th century chateau that had been in my family for 8 generations, all white stone and tall windows that caught the morning light. I'd assigned Noah the rose suite in the east wing, far enough from my quarters in the west wing to maintain appropriate distance, but close enough to the medical facility we set up on the ground floor. I told myself the choice of the prettiest guest suite was purely practical. Omegas needed pleasant surroundings during pregnancy. I told myself a lot of things in those first weeks. Noah arrived with a single suitcase and a box of books. He looked utterly lost standing in the grand entrance hall, dwarfed by the marble columns and crystal chandeliers. My housekeeper, Madame Rousseau, immediately took him under her wing, clucking about how thin he was, how he needed proper meals. I maintained my distance. I reviewed the daily medical reports Dr. Moreau provided. Noah's vitals were good, the pregnancy progressing normally. I ensured the kitchen prepared foods, rich in the nutrients omega pregnancies required. I had my assistant order anything Noah requested, which was surprisingly little. Some books, mostly, art supplies, a better record player when I learned his old one had broken years ago. I didn't visit him. I didn't need to. This was an arrangement, nothing more, that lasted exactly 2 weeks. I was working in my study late one evening when I heard music drifting through the chateau, the same Debussy piece from that first day. Unable to help myself, I followed the sound to the rose suite. The door was slightly ajar, and through it I could see Noah curled up in the window seat, one hand on his still, barely, their baby bump, the other holding a book. He looked so alone. I knocked softly. He startled, nearly dropping his book. "Monsieur Laurent," he said formally, setting the book aside and starting to stand. "Don't to get up. I was just, checking on him, like some lovesick fool, ensuring you have everything you need." "I do, thank you. Everyone's been very kind." An awkward silence stretched between us. This was absurd. I was a Laurent. I commanded boardrooms, negotiated million-euro deals, managed an estate and businesses that employed hundreds. Why did this gentle Omega make me feel like an uncertain boy? The music, I finally said. My mother loved Debussy. Noah's expression softened. Mine too. She used to play Clair de Lune every night before bed when I was little. He paused. She died when I was 12. Mine when I was 15. Another silence, but this one felt different. Less awkward, more understanding. Would you like to stay? Noah asked hesitantly. I was just reading, but if you like company. I should have said no, should have maintained the professional distance between us. Instead, I found myself settling into the chair opposite his window seat. What are you reading? He held up the book, a collection of poetry by Rainer Maria Rilke. It is probably silly, but I've been reading to the baby. I know they can really hear yet, but it is not silly. The words came out softer than I intended. Studies show that babies in utero respond to voices, to rhythm. Poetry is ideal. Noah smiled, the first real smile I seen from him since that night 3 months ago. Would you like me to read aloud? I should have said no, please, I heard myself say. His voice was beautiful when he read, soft and melodic, bringing the German verses to life even in French translation. I found myself relaxing in a way I hadn't in months, maybe years. When he reached Rilke, as love poems, his voice grew even gentler, almost wistful. Do you believe in it? I asked when he paused between poems. Love, I mean. Noah looked up, surprised by the question. I think I used to, before my mother died, before my father became, before everything fell apart. I thought I'd find it someday. Someone who'd choose me, not because of what I could give them or what I represented, but just because of who I am. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. Foolish, maybe, especially for an Omega. Not foolish, I said, more sharply than intended. You deserve that, everyone does. Even you, he tilted his head, studying me. Do you believe in love, Monsieur Laurent? Sebastian, I corrected. If you are carrying my child, you can use my given name. Sebastian, he repeated, and the sound of my name in his voice did something dangerous to my composure. Do you believe in love? I believe in duty, responsibility, legacy. The answer came automatically, the same one I'd given my father countless times. But looking at Noah's gentle face, I found myself adding, I used to believe in love before I understood that Laurent Heir's dawn, to have the luxury of romantic choices. That sounds lonely. It is practical. It can be both. I stood abruptly. This conversation was veering into dangerous territory. I should go. You need rest, Sebastian, he called as I reached the door. Thank you for listening, for this. I only nodded and left, but I found myself returning the next evening, and the next. It became a routine. Each night, I'd finish my work and make my way to the Rose Suite. Sometimes Noah read to me, and to the baby he always insisted. Sometimes we talked. I learned about his childhood in Lyon, his love of books, his dreams of maybe opening a small bookshop someday. He learned about my responsibilities, the weight of the Laurent name, the loneliness of being groomed from birth to be someone, this idea of the perfect heir. I told myself these visits were just monitoring the pregnancy, ensuring Noah's emotional well-being. I told myself a lot of lies. The truth hit me when Noah was 16 weeks along. I was reviewing contracts in my study when Madame Rousseau knocked urgently. Monsieur, it is Noah. He is bleeding. I don't remember the sprint to the Rose Suite. I don't remember shouting for Dr. Moreau or calling for my car to be brought around. All I remember is the sight of Noah curled on his bed, pale and trembling, blood staining the white sheets. The baby, he whispered when he saw me. Please, Sebastian, don't let me lose the baby. I took his hand, and it was ice cold. You won, T. I promise you won. The drive to my private hospital in Paris was the longest 20 minutes of my life. I held Noah in the back of the car, his head against my shoulder, feeling every tremor that ran through his body. "I am sorry," he kept whispering. "I am so sorry. I know the baby is all that matters." "You matter," I said fiercely, surprising us both. "You matter, Noah." At the hospital, they whisked him away immediately. I was left in a private waiting room, pacing like a caged animal. All I could think about was that night at the masquerade, the way Noah had looked at me like I was someone worth knowing, not just the Laurent heir, the gentle way he touched me, like I was precious, the soft sound of his laugh, the way he read poetry to our baby every night, his hand resting protectively on his stomach, the way he looked at me last evening when I brought him a first edition of Rilke, I found in the estate's library, like I given him the world. Dr. Moreau found me 3 hours later. "The baby is stable. It was placental abruption, but we caught it in time. Noah needs complete bed rest for the remainder of the pregnancy, and we need to monitor him closely, but both he and the baby should be fine." I actually stumbled, catching myself against a chair. "He is okay," shaken, exhausted. "But yes, you can see him now." Noah was in a private room, hooked up to monitors, looking impossibly small in the hospital bed. His eyes were closed, but they fluttered open when I approached. "The baby?" he asked, immediately. "Safe. You are both safe." Tears spilled down his cheeks. I was so scared, I thought I failed you, failed our agreement. I sat on the edge of the bed and took his hand, no longer caring about propriety or professional distance. Damn the agreement. When Madame Rousseau told me you were bleeding, all I could think about was that I might lose you. Not the heir, not the baby, you, Sebastian. I am terrified, Noah. I've never been this terrified in my life. When I saw you in that bed, bleeding, all I wanted was to keep you safe, to hold you and never let anything hurt you again. His green eyes searched my face, wide and uncertain. "You don't mean that?" "You can, this is just what? A transaction? A business arrangement?" I laughed bitterly. "Maybe it started that way, but somewhere between your poetry readings and our late-night conversations and the way you smile when you talk about the baby, our baby, Noah, not just my heir, somewhere in there, I fell in love with you." The monitors beeped steadily in the silence that followed. Noah stared at me like I just spoken in a foreign language. "You can he finally whispered. "I am just a librarian with dead parents and crushing debt. You are Sebastian Laurent, alpha heir to centuries of legacy. I am the omega you hired to give you a baby. You are the person who makes me laugh when you do dramatic readings of terrible romance novels you find in the library. You are the one who rearranged all the flowers in your room by color, because it made more sense that way. You are the one who cried watching a nature documentary about baby elephants last week." I cupped his face gently. "You are the person I think about first thing every morning and last thing every night. You are the one who made me believe I could be more than just the Laurent heir." "This is crazy," he breathed, but his hand came up to cover mine on his cheek. "Probably, but I am in love with you anyway. No agreements, no contracts, no conditions. Just love. I don't know how to do this," he said, fresh tears falling. "I've never had anyone choose me before, not really. Then let me be the first. Let me prove to you every day that you are worth choosing." He pulled me down into a gentle kiss, mindful of the monitors and his condition, but it was perfect anyway. When we broke apart, he was smiling through his tears. "I love you too," he whispered. "I think I have since that first night, even though I knew I shouldn't, even though it was supposed to be just one night." I kissed him again, softer this time. "No more talk of what things were supposed to be. Let's talk about what they are." The next 5 months were the most challenging and beautiful of my life. Noah was on strict bed rest, which drove him slightly mad. I moved his entire library to his room and worked from the chair beside his bed most days. We drove the medical staff crazy with our constant questions, our late night worries, our need to hear the baby's heartbeat just one more time. I read to him when he was too tired to read himself. He edited my business correspondence, pointing out when I was being unnecessarily harsh or overly formal. We picked out names together, Eleanor for a girl, after his mother, Henry for a boy, after mine. My family, predictably, was horrified when I told them I intended to marry Noah before the baby was born. He is completely unsuitable, my aunt declared at a tense family dinner. No family name, no fortune, no connections. This is exactly why we insisted on the contract, so you wouldn't develop inappropriate attachments. The contract is void, I said calmly, though my alpha instincts screamed at the criticism of my omega. I am in love with Noah, and I am going to marry him. The baby will still be a Laurent heir, but Noah will be my spouse, not some surrogate you can dismiss. You are thinking with my uncle started. Choose your next words carefully, I interrupted, my voice dropping to a dangerous register. Noah is carrying my child. He nearly died bringing our baby into this world. He is brilliant, kind, and stronger than any of you give him credit for. If you can respect him, you can consider yourselves uninvited from our lives. The stunned silence that followed was deeply satisfying. Later that night, I told Noah about the confrontation. He was quiet for a long moment, his hand resting on his now prominent belly. You don't have to alienate your family for me, he said softly. I am not doing it for you. I am doing it for us, for our family. I placed my hand on his stomach, feeling the baby kick. You and this little one. You are my family now. Everything else is secondary. He kissed me, long and sweet. How did I get so lucky? I think I am the lucky one. At 38 weeks, Noah went into labor 3 weeks early. It was 3 a.m, and I was jolted awake by his gasp of pain. We prepared for this. Bags packed, hospital on alert, but nothing prepared me for the reality of seeing him in pain. The labor lasted 19 hours. I held his hand through every contraction, whispered encouragement when he said he could do it anymore, wiped the sweat from his forehead, and fell more deeply in love with him with every passing moment. When our daughter finally arrived, tiny and perfect and screaming her displeasure at the world, the nurse placed her in Noah's arms, and I watched his face transform with wonder. Eleanor, he whispered, touching her tiny hand. We have a daughter, Sebastian. I couldn't speak, could barely breathe. This perfect, tiny human was ours, created from a night that was supposed to mean nothing and had ended up meaning everything. Would you like to hold her? Noah asked, his eyes shining. I took our daughter carefully, marveling at how she fit perfectly in my arms. She had Noah's nose, my eyes, and a shock of dark hair. She was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen, except for the Omega, who given birth to her. That is when I remembered the contract, the agreement that Noah would hold her once and then walk away. The thought of it made me physically ill. I handed Eleanor back to Noah and fumbled for my phone. My lawyer answered on the second ring, clearly unhappy about the 4 a.m. call. The Bennett contract, I said without preamble. Destroy it, every copy immediately. Monsieur Laurent, are you certain? Destroy it, that is an order. I hung up and turned back to Noah, who was looking at me with questions in his eyes. What was that about? I knelt beside the hospital bed, taking his free hand in both of mine. Eleanor had quieted, content in her father's arms. Noah Bennett, you are the strongest, kindest, most beautiful person I've ever known. You've given me a daughter I never knew I needed and shown me what love actually means. You've made me laugh, made me think, made me feel things I thought I buried forever. I took a shaky breath. Will you marry me? Not because of any agreement or contract, not because of Eleanor or family expectations, just because I love you and I want to spend the rest of my life proving it. Noah's tears fell onto Eleanor's blanket. You already destroyed the contract, didn't you? Before I could answer. Yes, because whether you marry me or not, you are Eleanor, Father, you are not giving her up, not giving us up. I won to allow it. He laughed through his tears. You won to allow it? Absolutely not. You are stuck with us now. Good, he whispered, because yes, I'll marry you. Yes to everything. I kissed him, careful not to jostle our sleeping daughter between us. When I pulled back, he was smiling that soft smile I'd fallen in love with. I thought you were just a hookup, he said quietly. One night with a beautiful stranger, at a party I had no business attending. I never imagined that I'd fall hopelessly in love with you, that you'd become my whole world. I stroked Eleanor's soft cheek. Me neither. Best surprise of my life. Second best, Noah corrected, looking down at our daughter. She is the first. We married a month later in the chateau, S. Gardens, with Eleanor sleeping in her bassinet throughout the ceremony. It was small, just Madame Rousseau, Dr. Moreau, a few close friends, and my aunt and uncle, who had grudgingly accepted that Noah was now part of the family. Noah wore a simple white suit that made his green eyes even more striking. Eleanor wore a christening gown that had been in my family for generations. I couldn't stop smiling, couldn't stop touching Noah's hand, his cheek, reassuring myself this was real. When the officiant pronounced us married, Noah kissed me like we were the only two people in the world. Behind us, Eleanor let out a small, contented sigh in her sleep, as if approving of her father's union. That night, after we put Eleanor down in the nursery, we spent weeks preparing. Noah and I stood on the balcony of our shared suite. No more separate wings, no more distance between us. Do you ever regret it? I asked, pulling him against my chest. That night at the masquerade, if you could go back knowing everything that would happen, would I change it? Noah turned in my arms to face me. The fear when I found out I was pregnant, the pain of thinking I have to give up our baby, nearly losing Eleanor. Yes, all of it. He cupped my face in his hands, his expression tender, not for a second, every moment, the scary ones, the painful ones, even signing that awful contract. They all led us here, to Eleanor, to us, to this family we've built. I love you, I said, because I needed him to hear it, to know it beyond any doubt. I love you too, my beautiful, complicated, wonderful Alpha, who was supposed to be just a hookup. And you are the Omega who was supposed to give me an heir and nothing more. Look at us, Noah laughed, defying expectations. Always, I promised, kissing him, for the rest of our lives. From the nursery, Eleanor's soft cry announced she was hungry. Noah smiled against my lips. Duty calls. Let me, I said. You rest. I'll bring her to you. As I walked to the nursery, I thought about the man I'd been 3 months ago, cold, focused only on duty and legacy, convinced that love was a luxury I could afford. That man wouldn't recognize who I'd become, a husband, a father, someone who believed in love above all else. I picked up Eleanor, who stopped crying the moment she was in my arms. Her eyes, my eyes, blinked up at me sleepily. Your papa is waiting, I told her softly, and tomorrow you'll wake up in a house full of love. You'll never doubt, not for a single day, that you are wanted, that you are cherished, that you are the best thing that ever happened to us. She yawned, unimpressed by my emotional speech, and I laughed. You are right, let's get you fed. I carried her back to Noah, who was propped up in bed, arms ready to receive her. As he settled her to nurse, I climbed in beside them, wrapping my arms around my family. This was what I'd been searching for all along, even when I didn't know it. Not just an heir to carry on the Laurent name, but someone to share my life with, someone to love who loved me in return, someone who saw past the title and the legacy to the man underneath, and our daughter, perfect and tiny, who would grow up knowing that love, real, messy, unexpected love, was the greatest legacy of all. Sebastian, Noah murmured sleepily, Eleanor nursing contentedly. Thank you for choosing us. I kissed his temple, breathing in the scent of him, books and jasmine and home. Every day, I promised, for the rest of my life, I'll keep choosing us. And I did.